Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Lokash from Memorial University's Department of English. Welcome to Sparkles 2022, an imprint, we might say, of the Sparks Literary Festival. It has been hard times for organizers of live events like Sparks. We have been thwarted in our efforts to put on a full festival multiple times in these past 2 years. But we have been quietly fanning the festival embers, and this year my colleagues have planned a series of explosive events in flexible formats that continue the project of celebrating the amazing variety of genres, styles, and subjects created by writers in our very midst, crackling with talent and inspiration. Like other Memorial University events that celebrate the rich and sometimes wild literary landscapes of this province, such as our own Visiting Writers series, our Writer in Residence program, and the Office of Alumni Engagement's book club, winningly called Coastlines, to name a few, Sparks has been sharing great writing with appreciative audiences since my colleague Mary Dalton conceived of the festival a remarkable 12 years ago. We are acutely conscious that the beautiful lands on which Memorial's campus are situated and which so vividly take shape in the foregrounds and backgrounds of the work showcased through Sparks are in the traditional territories of diverse Indigenous groups. We acknowledge with respect the histories and cultures of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of this province. We fully commit through Sparks and our other departmental endeavors to honoring these histories and cultures through the crucial work of sharing and promoting many more Indigenous and racialized voices in the years to come. So, what are these sparkles that we are sending up into the universe? Over the next few months, we will be hosting a panel event on genre fiction, an event called 7-Minute Stories, and a spring or summer poetry slam, hopefully in Bannerman Park. We will promote each of these events through our departmental social media and on our Sparks website, so look out for more information soon. For the opening event in the series, we have partnered with Rogers TV, thank you Rogers, to bring you First Pages, readings and interviews with 4 Memorial alumni who will share with us some of their new and exciting work. I will take this opportunity to thank all of the magnificent writers, outstanding interviewers, and brilliant event hosts who will be involved in the Sparkles series. Your generosity and immense creativity is what keep us going. And last but not least, many thanks to you, our faithful Sparks audience, and to readers and lovers of words everywhere. The Sparks Literary Festival is fortunate to be supported by some incredible patrons. The firm of Brown, Fitzgerald, Morgan, and Avis has funded the soon-to-be-revived Sparks Poetry Contest. Adrian Cody and the Newfoundland Irish Association have sponsored our Visiting Irish Writers, and the Landfall Trust has partnered with us for an Author Residency Award at glorious Kent Cottage in Brigus. And then there's the Cox and Palmer Sparks Creative Writing Award. Through its Bravo Supporting the Arts program, the law firm of Cox and Palmer have been committed to supporting and sustaining the incredible talent within the province in the areas of music, visual and performing arts, and literary arts. Paul McDonald and his committee have been involved with the Sparks Festival for an astonishing 11 years through their establishment of this award, which is bestowed annually to a memorial student who shows exceptional promise in their undergraduate and graduate creative writing courses. As far as prizes go for emerging writers, the Cox and Palmer Award is substantial, growing, presumably along with inflation, to $5,000 in recent years. This kind of financial support can be genuinely transformative for a writer, as it buys that most precious of writerly commodities, time. And it would be impossible to overstate the positive outcomes for the winners, all of whom have thrived in their writing lives since, publishing book after book to great acclaim, being shortlisted for and winning major literary prizes, running retreats and editing journals, a new generation of voices shaping and shaped by life in Newfoundland and Labrador. I thought I'd take this opportunity to remind our audience of the 10 brilliant recipients of this award so far. They are Randy Drover, Dana Evely, Ian McCurdy, Melissa Barbeau, Katie Vautour, Bridget Canning, Matthew Hollett, Heidi Wicks, Andrea Callanan, and Michelle Porter. Normally, we surprise the winner at the end of the Sparks festivities, and Paul has always been there to present the award himself. He has been so committed that he hand-delivered a check to Andrea Callanan's home in the midst of Snowmageddon and has been enthusiastically willing to roll with our changing plans for bestowing the award during pandemic times. We're so grateful to Paul and to Cox & Palmer's Bravo program for the ongoing support of the Sparks Creative Writing Award, for all that they do for our festival and for many other arts organizations in our province. I truly thank them. Steadfast and generous, Paul McDonald is once again here, and it's my pleasure to have a little chat with him today before he announces this year's winner.
Good to see
Paul,
you after 2 years.
I know. How are you doing?
Just fine, thank you very much. Just fine.
It's so wonderful that you have been willing to do this for us and for our students all of these years, and I wondered if you'd like to say a few words about the experience and anything you'd like to share.
Well, I remember every single one of the 10 names that you just read out, and looking back through the records, you know, it was January 26th, 2012, when we passed out the first one. I think that was to, who was our first name there?
That
Randy.
was to Randy Drover.
Randy
That's
Drover,
right.
yes. And I do remember going to the house on Pleasant Street in the middle of some very bad weather to deliver a check down there too. So this will be our 11th now, this year?
Yes, that's right. This is our 11th.
That's right.
That's
and,
right.
One thing my partners ask me about this award every year is, why aren't we seeing any applications for articling positions from these winners?
Do you want to send them to law school too?
No, we don't want to do that. No, I'm being a little bit, trying to be a little bit funny there, but the ability to read and the ability to write, as simple as that sounds, are valuable assets in somebody who wants to practice law. We're encouraged, though, that we're encouraged in a way that we're not getting any applications from these people, and I'm saying this in jest, because it tells us that these people are going on to do what they were meant to do.
And they are. I mean, I know each of these people. I know how transformative this gift really was for them, this prize. They're always so very shocked and honored and excited by it. And we're looking forward to another big surprise here today, I think.
I'm glad you used the word transformative. I remember one of the winners, and I won't mention that person's name, but told me that for the first time in his life, he was able to buy a bottle of single malt scotch.
There you go.
Right?
I suspect I know who it was.
Anyway, we're delighted to be able to help every year, and to be able to support people who have obviously already shown some ability and talent, and we're quite happy to encourage that. It's for the best of the community here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Absolutely, it is. I wondered if you wanted just to say a few words about the Bravo program, since it's so wonderful for our community.
Well, you just mentioned it, and that continues. We are supporting people and groups and organizations in the literary arts, performing arts, music, you know, right across the spectrum. And we, by and large, the people we were supporting 10 years ago, we're still supporting. We're always adjusting because new things and new people are coming along. But the partners are thrilled to be able to do this. And I've had the full and unanimous support of the partners of the firm since we started.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. We're so lucky. We're really, truly grateful for this work that you do, because it's not a small thing. It's you know, it's work for your firm every year, and we are benefiting from it.
We're very happy to do it.
Well, thank you. So I think that today we have a special surprise for our 2022 recipient, the 11th recipient of the Cox and Palmer Sparks Creative Writing Award.
Is he here somewhere
And
now?
I think he might be here somewhere.
Okay. Where is he? I have some papers to serve. I'm looking for a William Ping.
That's me.
Mr. Ping, I have some papers to serve on you.
Okay.
I'm Paul McDonald from Cox and Palmer Law Firm.
Okay.
And every year we have the pleasure of awarding the Cox and Palmer Sparks Creative Writing Prize. And the winner this year is you.
Oh my God, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Wow, that's amazing, thank you.
Good on you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It's amazing, incredible.
And the best of luck to you. Carry on.
Thank you so much.
Did we manage to surprise
You did, you really did surprise me.
Hi everyone, welcome to Sparks. I'm Angela Antle, a PhD student at Memorial University, and I'm here with William Ping, well-known Newfoundland writer. His novel Hollow Bamboo will be soon released, January 2023, published by HarperCollins Canada, and he's a member of the Quilted Collective, and we're going to talk about his short story in the Quilted Collective, Us Now anthology here today. And he's also a brand new winner of the Cox and Palmer Creative Writing Award. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Very nice to walk into a place and get a nice
Yeah.
fat check. Isn't
Not
it?
often, not often does that happen, but it's great.
Doesn't happen to writers very often.
No.
I don't think so. So congratulations, that's very well deserved.
Thank you so much.
William and I have been in writing classes together. I know of his many talents. But I only read this story yesterday. I hadn't read it before. And I'm so intrigued by these two characters.
Oh yeah.
The two main characters. So can you pronounce their names for me?
They would be Poi and Xiao Wei.
So Poi and Xiao Wei are two sides of the coin in some ways.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Why did you choose to make Xiao Wei more of an English speaker and Poi less of an English speaker?
Right. Well, I should begin by saying that it's sort of a deleted scene, or even you could think of it as like a teaser trailer, if you will, of the novel that's coming out next year. So there's sort of the two central characters in that as well. And so Poi is based on my grandfather.
Okay.
Right, so whose name is also William Ping. And he immigrated to St. John's in the 1930s. And so the novel sort of came from just imagining the story of his life, sort of taking the broad strokes of his life, and then sort of just bringing more of a novelistic sort of flair to it. I've called it sort of a speculative biography, right? So it's sort of part truth, part fiction. And so in coming up with that, I sort of wanted a counterweight to his character. So whereas Poi is very naive and new to everything in the West, Xiao Wei has been around the block a few times already, right? So he's lived in America before he moved to Newfoundland, and that way we have sort of a balance between these two characters, and they can butt heads sometimes, and they have their differences, they have their arguments, but they become great friends over here in Newfoundland in the 1930s.
And Xiao Wei is very protective right away.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right from the beginning, yeah. And you'll see that in the novel too, that, you know, they sort of hit it off right away, and they're fast friends and, you know, maybe sometimes fast enemies. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, now there's a teaser.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say speculative when we're talking about historical fiction. Generally,
Right.
people are deep into research. Was there a lot of research?
There was a lot of research. There was a lot of research. So, you know, a lot of historical research, even going back and consulting, say, old newspapers and seeing how did they write about the Chinese community in Newfoundland at that time, which was, you know, not a very welcoming environment at times back then. And, you know, and then even just listening to the stories of my grandfather's life, right? So he passed away when I was quite young, and I didn't really know him. So that's sort of where the impetus for all of this comes from anyways, to sort of imagine the life of this man that I've heard so much about. And, you know, but he had a documentary about his life called The Last Chinese Laundry.
Okay.
And so in that, he sort of tells all these stories and, you know, just sort of building from that and building from stories that my family told me about him and, you know, other works that were written about him, just taking the broad strokes of that and then applying some, you know, some fictional elements, but then some other elements. Say, for example, in the story from the Us Now book, you know, there's stories there that I heard from my uncle about his own childhood. So the incident with the tomatoes in the short story that happened to my uncle in the 70s, right? And so, and the incident with the guy who's trying to guess his age, that happened to my grandfather for real. So, you know, we had a lot of these sort of oral history moments, and it was just a matter of working them into a larger narrative.
So having done all that research and having to live inside the mind of your grandfather for all intents and purposes for months probably to write this book, do you feel different? Has it affected how you walk through the world?
Definitely in some ways, you know, definitely after doing all that research and seeing the struggles that he would have had at that time and that the Chinese community would have had at that time, you know, there's a wide gap between the privilege that I have today and, you know, the hardships that he and the community at large would have went through back then. And that was sort of the reason, one of the reasons as well behind the creation of the whole project was sort of to, you know, wrap my head around, you know, I'm white passing, or some people would say completely look white, right? And, you know, the privileges that come with that compared to, you know, what he had to go through, right? So it was definitely, you know, a very emotionally draining process a lot of days to sort of think about the hardships that he would have went through, whether that be racism or the long work days, you know, the working conditions at that time. So it was quite a contrast to my life in some ways. So that was kind of one of my goals behind that was to sort of unpack the difference between, you know, back then and today, or myself and him, and right.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel closer to him?
I do, I definitely do, and it's been an interesting thing because some stuff that I would just come up with, since then family members would read and would say, oh, you know, he really would do that, you know? And it's like, oh, really interesting, you know, that there would be sort of ideas that I just came up with on my own that would have rang true in his own life. So I think that there is definitely, I definitely do feel closer to him, closer to the history of him, I guess we could say.
Mm. So you have let your family read it already?
I have let my family read it already. After I sold the book to the publisher, then I said, okay, I'll let mom and dad read it now. And but before then, there was to be no questions asked. There was to be no, nobody was to read it. That was that. And then after it was sold, I was like, okay, nobody can talk me out of this now. Now you can read it. My mom loved it. My dad was my grandfather's son. You know, he went through it with a, you know, very close reading to find little historical inaccuracies, I guess you would say, you know. Like he would read a chapter and say like, okay, the train wouldn't have moved at this speed during that period of that decade. And it's like, okay.
Good. He's a good editor.
Well, exactly, yeah. So it was good, but I have a lot of intentional inaccuracies in there because I do want to acknowledge the way that history is always sort of a story told by somebody with a certain perspective, right? And obviously my perspective is a world of difference from what my grandfather, that is, would have been. So I do have a lot of historical inaccuracies there intentionally to remind the reader that, hey, you know, this is not a historical document, this is sort of a fictional thing, and like I said, sort of a speculative biography.
And history is not really truth, right?
Oh, exactly.
It's just a story. Yeah.
It's hard to ever get to the truth of any sort of historical event or lived experience, you know, there's always different perceptions, and, you know, there's always, you know, who tells the story impacts the story, right? Yeah.
I want you to read the story from the anthology, but before we get there, there's a beautiful scene where they're on the train, the two men, and they're not allowed to open the blinds, and they're under guard all the way across from Vancouver to Newfoundland on the train. But they stop at some train stop, and the guard says, "Open the blinds," and they open the blind, and there's an eyeball.
Yeah, that's right.
What
yeah.
does that eyeball represent?
What does the eyeball represent? You know, I don't know. No, I don't know. No. I'll let the reader decide. No, but I think that throughout the book, that's a scene from the short story there, but throughout the book we have a lot of encounters with animals. And
It's an elephant eyeball.
this is yeah, exactly. This is the eyeball of an elephant. And I think generally it was sort of a recurring theme throughout the book of the way that animals are sort of taken from their homes and used for these sort of capitalistic sort of gains, right? So an elephant who's being used in a circus in Newfoundland in the 1930s, you know, I don't think the elephant is meant to be in this type of climate, right? So I think a lot of that came from that sort of idea of
the exotic.
the exotic and, you know, the role that capitalism sort of plays in forcing, you know, these animals, specifically the elephant, into places where they probably shouldn't be, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Will you read from the story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So this story is called The Chinese Lady. It takes place in 1931. Poi and Xiao Wei recited lines from the newspaper over and over again, but quietly so as to not disturb the other laundrymen who had already settled in on their iron beds for the night. Sitting atop piles of customers' ketchup-stained tablecloths, Xiao Wei would read the newspaper aloud, and then Poi would repeat his words, sounding them out in a slow and deliberate manner. They found this to be the best way to learn. St. John's was a new city for both of them, but English was only new for Poi, the foreign language being one of his many worries in his new home. An invasion, Poi sounded out, slow and hushed. An invasion from the Orient. An invasion from the Orient. Good, Xiao Wei said, good. Let's keep going. An inferior type, Xiao Wei read aloud, moving on to the next paragraph. Lower in the scale of humanity and civilization than are our people. It is undesirable to have a large colony of them here to live. They are most peculiar people. Nowhere do they merge with the people among whom they live. They keep to themselves and could never be expected to become what might be termed Newfoundlanders. Xiao Wei put the paper down and sighed. You read out too much, Poi said in Taishanese. I only caught the ending. And what was the ending? Never expect be Newfoundlanders, Poi said in English, then added in Taishanese, that's all I caught. What does it mean? Let's read something else, Xiao Wei said, flipping the page. The men were faced with a full-page cartoon ad depicting two women in short dresses, arms entwined and outstretched, balancing on an elephant's head. What's this, Poi said. It says Alfred J. Hennessy and Sons Royal Circus. Poi repeated the words slowly. Hippodrome, Xiao Wei said. Never heard of that word before. Menagerie and museum. They continued to read and translate the ad until Poi could successfully read aloud all of the words. The Royal Circus Company will comprise of lady and gentlemen equestrian artistes, gymnasts, acrobats, and equilibrists, selected from the finest companies across Europe and America. Also featuring Hennessy's clowns and grotesques, Hennessy's stud of educated horses and ponies, Professor Brown and his maritime minstrel Jubilee, the famous trained elephants, an appearance from the great Wazini, and a chance to peek at the Chinese lady. The whole entertainment will be found morally instructive and amusing, as can be testified by the reigning royalty, nobility, and clergy of the United Kingdom. 3 days only, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening, and positively no longer. As they recited these lines, Poi thought about how this learning process was like the church services that the Reverend dragged them to on Sundays. Repeated lines, hushed tones, as if the newspaper was a sacred biblical text. Church had been Poi and Xiao Wei's only real respite from work in St. John's, the only place where they could go for leisure and also be reasonably sure that the locals wouldn't harass them for taking their jobs or taking their women or taking the fish or some other made-up allegation. But church was boring. A circus sounded fun. We should go to it, Poi said after repeating and learning the words for an hour. Do you think it's the same circus we saw on the train? Xiao Wei paused for a moment before conceding that he had already forgotten the incident Poi was talking about.
Thanks, Will. That was great. Let's talk about the Quilted Collective.
Right.
I've met some of these writers. They're an amazing group, and they're really changing,
Absolutely.
I would say, literature in Newfoundland. What's your experience been like?
You know, I met this group of writers, I think it was in either 2019 or 2018, you know, just as we were all sort of coming together. I think it was 2019. And, you know, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. I worked with Lisa Moore in the beginning, sort of assisting her, and then sort of joined the collective. And, you know, just each of the writers was just so amazing. You know, I always tell people that my story is the worst in this book, right? That the other people have just such incredible tales. And, you know, just stories from all over the world and such diverse backgrounds. And yet everybody's ended up here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think that this is an example of sort of the future of the literary scene here. I think that the...
Let's hope.
Yeah, definitely. The literary scene here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I think even Atlantic Canada at large, is about to sort of explode open with all these sort of stories from different backgrounds and different points of view that we may not have heard so frequently. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the quilt, the metaphor of the quilt is so interesting because the stories are getting stitched in
Exactly.
to Newfoundland, right?
Everybody's bringing their own little piece from somewhere, and it's all coming together as one sort of grander design, right? So, and that's the Newfoundland classic, right? The quilt.
That's right.
Yeah, and so it's coming together from all over the world, and
And there's a great story in here about falling in love with water buffalo that I just
an incredible
love.
That's from Zay. That's one of the. It's one of the most incredible short stories I think I've read, like as a writer here, you know? Yeah.
When did you start writing? Because I don't think you were in the English department when you started writing, were you?
I was not. You know, when I joined MUN, I joined under the biochemistry wing of things, right?
You're not going to get a job with that.
No, exactly, no. This was way better. This is way more profitable, yeah.
You've heard that joke.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, I joined under biochemistry, and then I took a class with Jessica Grant, who's also a writer. And just after I took that class, I was like, oh, English, okay, maybe this is something. And so then did an English undergrad, and did the honors undergrad rather, and you know, and then Joel Deshay was sort of, hey, you know, do a master's. So like, whatever, I'm not doing anything else, right? So I did the master's, and then I met Lisa Moore, and I met you, and once I met Lisa and you, I was going to say after that is when I started writing, and it just flew from there.
And here you are with a book coming out from HarperCollins.
An incredible.
Which is no mean feat.
No, I know, yeah, it's insane. You know, I find it hard to believe even sometimes, but, you know, I'm so excited and so grateful for everything, you know, and grateful to you and grateful to Lisa and the university at large, and, you know, it's just been an amazing time.
Well, we can't wait to celebrate with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Ignite